Okay, so in the second lesson on quadratic functions, we're going to be looking at factoring, using the quadratic formula, and using the discriminant to determine the number of solutions for x. First though, what is a trinomial? Because we will be seeing lots of those. That is a polynomial with 3 terms. For example, we have x squared plus 2x minus 3 has got 1, 2, 3 terms. But what is solving for x in a trinomial actually telling us? Well, you might see these words, find the roots for x, or find the x-intercepts, or the number of roots, or the number of x-intercepts. Usually they'll say of a parabola. That's exactly the same thing as saying solve for x. So what that means on a graph, say that we determine that x equals -1 and 3. So -1 would be both there, 3 would be there. That means that that is where the parabola crosses the x-axis. And that's why saying solving for x is the same thing as giving us the roots or the x-intercepts. And we're going to look at a couple different ways to solve for x. The first way is factoring. And the second way is using the quadratic formula. For factoring, there's a couple of different methods we're going to look at. One is for something called x squared, and one I'll label as ax squared. X squared is when the number in front of the x squared is a 1. Ax squared is going to be when the number in front of the x squared is not 1. And we'll see that solving with ax squared is a little more complicated. Okay, so let's start off with when the number in front of the x squared is a 1. So what we look at first is we look at this last term here, which is the -2. And we look at factors of -2 that add or subtract to give us the middle term, which is a +1, because that's what is in front of the x. So factors of -2, so that's numbers that multiply to give -2. So 1 times -2 is -2. -1 times 2 is -2. And those are only options. So the pair that adds or subtracts to give +1 is going to be this one here. Okay, and all we do is we set up 2 sets of brackets, put an x in the front of each, and take these 2 numbers there. So we're going to put a -1 in one and a +2 in the other. So we end up with brackets x minus 1 and x plus 2. And now we set each bracket equal to 0 to solve for x. So we're going to add 1 to each side. That is x equals 1. And this one we've got subtract 2 from each side, x equals -2. So our answer is x equals 1, -2. And a great thing about factoring is that we can check our work. So in this case, we can take our 2 sets of brackets, x minus 1 and x plus 2, multiply those out, and as long as it gives us our original equation, then we did our work correctly. So let's look at this. So we're going to have to go x times x times +2. -1 times x, and -1 times +2. So that's going to equal x times x is x squared. X times +2 is +2x. -1 times x is -1x. And -1 times +2 is -2. All right, so combining those terms, +2x minus x, +x minus 2, And yes, that's what we started with. Okay, and it's always nice to keep in mind what this is actually looking like as a graph. So our solutions of x equals -1 and x equals -2. And there is no negative in front of the x squared term, so it opens up. So we got a parabola, roughly, very roughly, that's going to look something like that. Okay, next question. All right, so we need to factor this last number and get factors that add to +14. So factors of 48. 1 times 48 is 48. 2 times 24 is 48. 3 goes into it. How many times? Let's see. 48 divided by 3 is 16. 4 times 12. And 6 times 8. Okay. Let's see. 1 and 48. No. Oh, 6 plus 8 is 14. So we know that our we need to set up our brackets. So 1 bracket, 2 sets of brackets, and x at the front of each bracket. And the numbers that we need to add in each bracket are +6 and +8. We set each bracket equal to 0 and solve for x. So subtract 8 from each side, subtract 6 from each side, and that's our answer. X equals 6 and -8. And as a checking our answer. So we had x plus 6 and x plus 8 is what we got for the factors. So multiplying that out gives us x squared plus 8x plus 6x plus 48. X squared plus 14x plus 48. Yep. And as a graph, we're going to cross at -6 and -8, and it opens up because there's no negative in front of the x squared term. Okay. Next example. So we need to factor out the 7, because that's our last term. So factors of 7, 1 times 7, and that is all. Oh, but they need to add to -8. Well, -1 times -7 is still +7, and they add to -8, so that one works. Okay. So I need my 2 sets of brackets, x in the front of each. And my numbers I came up with were -1 and -7. So setting each equal to 0. Adding 1 to each side, add 7 to each side. So x equals 1, 7. And you can check your answer to make sure, but I'm just going to move along to another example. Okay, last number is 25. Factors of 25. Numbers that multiply. 1 and 25 gives me 25. 2, nope, 3, 4. 5 times 5 is 25. And that's it. So, let's look at that. 5 plus 5 is 10. Yeah, so that one works. Okay, so I'm going to put an x at the beginning of each bracket, a +5 and a +5. Set each equal to 0. And solve for x. So we can subtract 5 from each side. -5, -5. Subtract 5 from each side. Okay, so there's only one solution. X equals -5. That's weird. What does that look like on a graph? Well, if we went -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means that the parabola only touches right there. It never crosses. So that's how we can get away with just one solution for this. So try some of the practice problems and make sure to check your answers and contact me if you have any questions.